When most folks picture Wabibapuistaubusun soldiers digging in on the Eastern Front or climbing the wet slopes of Italy, they often imagine men crouched beneath canvas tents or under heavy tarps. But, the reality was far grimmer and far more ingenious. Tents were bulky, heavy, and quite rare in the field. In those freezing winds and relentless mud, what actually kept soldiers alive wasn't issued shelter at all. It was something they made themselves. A makeshift tarp substitute built from oilcloth, salvaged uniforms, and pitch-sealed canvas. This wasn't just an accessory, it was survival, plain and simple. In a war where supplies froze solid and resupply lines stretched hundreds of miles, soldiers learned to improvise with what they had. And this forgotten fieldcraft, the art of making weatherproof shelter without a tarp, still works as effectively today for campers, homesteaders and survivalists. On the Eastern Front, temperatures regularly dropped below -30 degrees Celsius. Canvas tents stiffened into boards, ropes froze, and even trench shovels splintered from frost. The Italians and Germans fighting in the Apennines faced a different enemy: unrelenting rain and sleet that turned mountain slopes into rivers of mud. Supply depots couldn't keep up, and field-issued tarps, known as Zeltbahnen in the German army or Telotender for the Italians, were often torn, lost or used for stretchers and camouflage instead. Soldiers couldn't wait for replacements, so they adapted. Using damaged uniforms, salvaged canvas from wrecked vehicles, and even old grain sacks, they crafted their own oilcloth-style sheets, lightweight, waterproof and flexible. The concept wasn't new. The technique drew inspiration from pre-war alpine expeditions and 19th-century hunting guides. What made it remarkable was how effective it proved in the worst war zones on Earth. The process began with whatever fabric could be scavenged. Wool blankets, tent scraps and uniform cloth were all used. The first step was to seal the fabric against moisture. Soldiers melted down whatever oil or grease they could find: machine lubricant, animal fat, linseed oil, even melted candle wax, and worked it into the fibres by hand. They would hang the fabric over a small fire or near a stove, letting the heat open the weave while the oils soaked through. Once saturated, the cloth was left to cool, forming a thin, flexible film over every thread. The result was what soldiers called field oilcloth. To strengthen seams, they melted pitch or pine resin, plentiful in the forests of Eastern Europe, and spread it along the edges or over weak patches. Sometimes they dusted the sticky surface with ash or soil to prevent it from becoming tacky. The outcome was a rugged, dark, weatherproof sheet that could shed rain and snow almost as effectively as manufactured tarpaulin. German infantry often used these homemade covers to reinforce dugouts, wrap supplies, or make ground sheets. Soviet soldiers, working with even fewer materials, developed a similar trick, rubbing motor oil and beeswax into heavy cloth until it became nearly waterproof. These crude but durable sheets were lightweight enough to roll and carry on a pack, yet sturdy enough to survive weeks of exposure. What these soldiers discovered through necessity aligns perfectly with material science. Natural fibres like cotton, wool and hemp absorb oils and waxes deeply, creating a hydrophobic layer that blocks water penetration. When heated, the oil expands into microscopic gaps in the weave, effectively sealing them. Pitch and resin added another layer of protection by creating a semi-rigid coating that resisted abrasion and wind. Unlike rubberized fabrics that could crack in cold weather, oiled cloth retained flexibility. This combination of absorption and surface sealing allowed even thin fabric to repel water under continuous rain or snow. The soldiers didn't need a degree in chemistry. They relied on observation and trial. If water beaded and rolled off, they knew they had succeeded. You can still make this same oilcloth-style shelter material in your backyard with modern safety and cleaner materials. Start with tightly woven cotton canvas, duck cloth, or even an old bedsheet if that's what you have. Melt a mixture of beeswax and boiled linseed oil in a metal container, roughly equal parts of each. Work outdoors or in a well-ventilated space, since linseed oil can release fumes. Brush the warm mixture evenly across the fabric until it's fully coated. Then hang it up and apply gentle heat with a hairdryer or by placing it in the sun for several hours. The heat helps the oil and wax penetrate the fibers. Once dry, the result will be a flexible, slightly stiff material that resists water and wind. Fold it, roll it, or drape it. It's ready for use. You can stretch it over a frame for a makeshift lean-to, lay it under your sleeping area to block ground moisture, or use it as a rain cover for firewood and gear. Just like the soldiers on the front lines, you'll find it does the job without the weight or cost of a modern tarp. The beauty of this WW2-era technique is that it blends resourcefulness with timeless practicality. Soldiers learned to survive with scraps, and what they created wasn't just functional, it was ingenious. In a time before synthetic coatings and nylon fabrics, they found a way to mimic waterproof technology using the most basic supplies imaginable. For anyone who enjoys off-grid living, bushcraft, or self-reliant homesteading, this skill is gold. You can produce your own weatherproof fabric using renewable materials, repair it indefinitely, and rely on it in situations where plastics or synthetics would fail. The process also gives you an appreciation for the kind of adaptability that defined wartime survival. Learning to create, not just consume. The men on the Eastern and Italian fronts didn't have a choice. They had to adapt or perish. Their makeshift oilcloths and resin-coated covers weren't conveniences. They were lifelines. Each one represented an understanding that survival depends more on ingenuity than equipment. That's the spirit we keep alive here on Backyard Wisdom. The old ways still have lessons to teach us. Lessons in resilience, simplicity, and craftsmanship. The real tarp substitute of World War II wasn't just a piece of cloth. It was a symbol of human willpower against nature itself. If you found this guide useful, take the time to try the process yourself. Share your results, test it in the rain, and see how it holds up. And if you want more of these forgotten techniques that merge history with practical survival knowledge, hit that subscribe button, share this with a fellow enthusiast, and stay tuned. Because here we keep the wisdom of the past alive, one field-tested story at a time.